I want to give you a major key for dream interpretation. And in all the times that I've, over 40 years now, been a Christian, reading books, hearing people teach and so on dreams, I've never heard anybody except one person talk about this. And the name of that person is Prophet John Paul Jackson. Prophet John Paul Jackson. He's now gone to be with the Lord, but he left a wonderful library of material on dream interpretation. And if you're interested in pursuing that further, I encourage you to get a hold of some of his things. So in a dream, we often see other people in that dream. And the biggest mistake that we can make is thinking because that person is in the dream, that dream is about them. But that's often not the case. It's probably only less than 90% of the time the dream is not about you. The dream is always about the person. But how do you tell the difference between a dream that's about somebody else, something else, or a dream that's about me? And this was what John Paul Jackson said. He said, if you are involved in that dream, if you are speaking, you're engaging with people, you're doing things, then that dream is about you. Even though the other person might appear in it, they might be very prominent. If you're involved in that dream, the dream is about you. And if you're not involved in the dream, if you're like a spectator, if it's like you're watching a movie and you're not participating in the dream, then that dream is about someone or something else. And so you might reflect now as you're hearing that on some of the dreams you've had, the ones where you've been participating, even when someone appears prominently. And that's the biggest mistake that gets made in dream interpretation. We go to that person and we say, hey, I had this dream about you. But the dream was actually not about the other person, it's about you. So one thing I didn't hear from John Paul Jackson was the biblical reasons for this. So I just want to try and take you through quickly. I know we're getting close to time. Take you quickly through those reasons. Just going over it again, if you're involved in the dream, participating in the dream, then the dream is about you. If you're not, then it's likely that dream is about someone else. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples. One is about Joseph. Remember, he had his dreams, and he was out binding sheaves with his brother when their sheaves bowed down to his. So he was out there, and it's in a work context, which is interesting because that was it was about the provision of food as well, the fulfillment of that dream. The second one was a little different because it was the sun, moon, and stars that were bowing down. And there wasn't a lot of detail he gave in that to necessarily say whether he was participating or not. But I think there's the two elements in that. The one where it certainly involved his life, but there was a thing that was bigger than him, beyond him, like the stars. And he was indeed like a star, or the sun. The sun was actually God in Egypt. And so even the Pharaoh, who was symbolized, the personification of the god Ra, was in a sense bowing down to David, giving him over to the rule. So there's a bit of both in that second one, but clearly the first one he was active and participating in. Now look at when you remember the baker and the cupbearer had dreams as well. So let's have a look at those. It's from Genesis 41, I think. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said, "In this dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and the clusters ripened into grapes. The Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup." So here we see again that participation. He's participating in these dreams. At the first part, he was kind of sitting back, but then he's participating, squeezing those grapes into Pharaoh's cup. And we know the interpretation, of course, but notice there again, he's participating in that dream, and that dream was about him personally. Now look as well at the chief baker. He saw that Joseph had been given a favourable interpretation. He said, I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets. The top basket was filled with all kinds of goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them up from the basket on his head. So he's there, he's participating in this, carrying this basket along, and the birds are eating from it. So again, with the interpretation that related to him personally. So let's have a look at one more. 41, so I think it was 40, that last chapter. Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile. When he looked out, when out of the river came up 7 cows, sleek and fat. They grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt gave up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. So here we see something different, right? We see Pharaoh there, and he's actually standing on the, I think some translations have the bank of the River Nile. He's standing by the Nile. Standing by the Nile. The Nile symbolises provision in that country as well. Like, I think they refer to it as the bread basket of Egypt or something like that. So he's standing there, he's observing. He's not participating in the dream. He's observing. So was that dream about him? No. It wasn't about him personally. It was about the nation of Egypt, which was symbolised by the Nile as well. So here we see an example of where you're watching something happen, but you're not necessarily participating in it. And then that dream is about someone or something else. And the context of a dream is often defined in the first part of it. And here we see that context, standing by the Nile, the bread basket of Egypt, the provision, and so on. So, and he goes on to talk about the heads of grain as well. But you see there, see that difference. A very important key for interpreting dreams. If you see someone in a dream, don't go immediately and tell that person, hey, I had a dream about you. Think about this first question to ask. Am I participating in that dream, or am I simply observing? And sometimes it can be a combination of the two, a little, like Joseph's. And there can be a situation where you're initially participating and then not, and vice versa. And that kind of speaks of things as well. But that's an important key I just wanted to give you today. And I'm praying that you'll be blessed and encouraged, and that will really help you categorize those dreams into dreams about me, dreams about someone or something else, and help prevent you from making that biggest dream interpretation mistake.